The Admiral's boots echoed through the hangar like a countdown. Every mechanic along the flight line straightened, tools frozen mid-motion, but his eyes tracked only one figure. A woman half hidden beneath the starboard engine of an F-22 Raptor, her flight suit stained with hydraulic fluid and something darker that might have been old blood. Vice Admiral Marcus Cale didn't make social calls to maintenance bays. When he appeared, careers either launched or ended. The woman didn't look up. Her hands moved with surgical precision through the engine's interior, fingers reading metal like braille, and for 17 seconds, Cale counted, she ignored the most decorated SEAL officer in naval special warfare history. Someone coughed. She torqued a final bolt, slid out from beneath $32 million of stealth fighter and stood. Lieutenant Commander Ava Ruiz was shorter than expected, maybe 5'4", with grease smeared across one cheekbone and eyes that held the particular emptiness of someone who'd watched things burn. Her name tape was faded. Her rank insignia sat crooked. She didn't salute. "Admiral," her voice carried the flat affect of exhaustion that never quite heals. Behind him, a captain inhaled sharply. The disrespect was career-ending. But Cale had read her file on the flight over. 4 deployments, 63 combat missions, a daughter in 2nd grade, a Medal of Honor recommendation that somehow never made it past preliminary review, and a call sign that made hardened fighter pilots go quiet, widow. Not because she was one, though the file noted a divorce 3 years back, but because of what happened over the Strait of Hormuz when her wingman's aircraft took a missile, and she'd flown through the debris field so close that burned hydraulic fluid had etched patterns on her canopy. She'd brought him home in a glide that defied physics, landed on fumes and prayer, then filed her report in 4 sentences. "I need a pilot who knows this bird better than its own designers," Cale said. Around them, the hangar had gone silent. Even the ventilation system seemed to hold its breath. "I need someone who can fly a mission that doesn't officially exist, in a theater we're not officially in, against an adversary we don't officially acknowledge." Ava looked at him for the first time, really looked, and something moved behind those empty eyes, not hope, nothing so fragile but recognition. The acknowledgement of one broken thing identifying another. "I'm a mechanic now," she said quietly. "I turn wrenches. I go home to my daughter. I don't fly." Cale pulled a photograph from his jacket. Satellite imagery, grainy but unmistakable. 6 American contractors bound and kneeling in desert sand, and behind them a terrorist commander whose face had haunted 3 presidential briefings. "They took them 4 days ago," Cale said. "We have 72 hours before the execution video goes live. Conventional rescue is impossible. The compound is in a no-fly zone surrounded by S-400 systems that can swat our best stealth bombers like flies. But there's an approach vector, a 30-second window during the daily sandstorm when their radar loses coherence. It requires flying at Mach 1.2, 12 feet off the deck, through a mountain pass so narrow you could touch both walls if you extended the wings." He let that sink in. "Our best sim pilots crashed it 94 times out of 100. The 6 who succeeded all had one thing in common. They'd flown with you. They said you'd make it 95 out of 100. They said you see things in the air that nobody else sees." Ava's jaw tightened. Her right hand curled involuntarily, fingers mimicking the grip of a control stick she hadn't touched in 11 months. "You read my file. You know why I don't fly anymore." "I read the official file," Cale agreed. 5-line incident report, pilot error, grounded pending psychological evaluation that kept getting postponed until you requested permanent transfer to ground operations. He stepped closer, voice dropping. "I also read the file that doesn't officially exist. The one that explains what really happened the night your entire squadron got lit up over Kandahar. The one that explains why you're changing diapers on fighter jets instead of flying them." She turned away, but not before he saw her eyes glisten. "That file is classified above your clearance, Admiral, SEAL or not." "I have friends in very dark places," Cale said. "I know you disobeyed a direct order. I know you broke formation. I know 3 F-18s got shot down because you went rogue." The hangar seemed to contract. Ava's shoulders rose, her spine straightening inch by inch, and when she turned back her face had hardened into something carved from stone. "Is that what you came here for? To relitigate the worst night of my life before asking me to risk it again?" "I came to tell you that I also know the part they left out of every report," Kale continued. "I know those 3 F-18s were already locked by enemy radar. I know you didn't break formation. You deliberately drew their fire. I know you took 17 separate missile locks, burned through every countermeasure in your arsenal, and flew an evasion pattern so aggressive you pulled 9GS for 47 consecutive seconds. I know your wingman passed out from the stress. I know you held formation while unconscious and woke up with blood vessels burst in both eyes." He pulled out a second photograph, grainy cockpit footage from another pilot's gun camera. It showed an F-22 corkscrewing through tracer fire, impossibly close to the ground, while 3 surface-to-air missiles detonated in the space where it had been microseconds before. "I know you saved 163 soldiers on the ground that night by keeping those SAM batteries focused on you instead of the medevac choppers extracting wounded from a hot LZ. And I know the official report called it pilot error because acknowledging what you actually did would require explaining why command sent fighters into a kill box without proper intelligence." Ava's breathing had changed, shallow and rapid. Her right hand trembled. "They died anyway. Jackson, Chen, Ramirez, they all went down. 3 pilots, 3 families, 3 flag-draped coffins because I thought I could outsmart physics and probability. You want to pin a medal on that? I want to give you a chance to save 6 lives instead of mourning 3 deaths," Kale said quietly. "Those contractors, one of them is a father of 4. Another is 3 months from retirement. They're mechanics and drivers, not soldiers. They were building a school when the convoy got hit. If we don't extract them, their last moments on Earth will be on camera, used as propaganda, their families forced to watch. And it will happen because nobody else can thread that needle through the mountains." The silence stretched. Somewhere in the hangar, a wrench clattered to concrete. Ava closed her eyes and Kale watched her fight a war inside herself, duty against trauma, capability against fear, the pilot she'd been against the mother she'd become. "My daughter," she finally said. "Emma, she's 7 if I don't come back." "You have my personal guarantee," Kale interrupted. "Full scholarship, trust fund, military benefits regardless of official mission status. I've already signed the paperwork." "She'll want for nothing." "That's not what I was going to say." Ava opened her eyes and they were no longer empty. Something had rekindled, dangerous and bright. "I was going to say that Emma drew a picture last week. It's me in a cockpit flying through stars. She doesn't remember me as a pilot, she was too young. But somehow she drew it anyway, like she knows that's who I'm supposed to be." She straightened fully, shoulders back, and suddenly the grease-stained mechanic vanished. In her place stood something else entirely, a weapon remembering its purpose. "When do we brief?" Kale allowed himself the ghost of a smile. "Wheels up in 6 hours, but first I need you to meet your crew." He gestured toward the hangar's far end where shadows detached themselves from between 2 F-22s. 4 figures emerged, 3 men and 1 woman, all wearing flight suits with call signs stitched above their hearts. Viper, Hammer, Ghost, Phoenix. They moved with the particular confidence of people who'd survived things that should have killed them. The tallest Viper had a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. Hammer walked with a barely perceptible limp. Ghost's hands bore burn marks that disappeared under his sleeves. Phoenix had the ageless face of someone who'd been 25 for 15 years. They stopped 3 paces away and as one came to attention. "Lieutenant Commander Ruiz," Viper said, and his voice carried the weight of ritual. "We flew with you over Kandahar. We were the medevac crews you saved." The air in the hangar changed, charged with something beyond electricity. Ava stared at them, recognition dawning in fragments. "Jackson survived," she whispered. "Chen ejected clean. Ramirez's chute deployed." "Chen's my brother," Ghost said quietly. "He lost his legs, but he's alive. Teaches at Top Gun now. Every class first day, he tells them about the pilot who bought him 30 seconds to eject, the 30 seconds that saved his life." Hammer stepped forward. "My medevac took fire 18 times during that extraction. Every round missed because their targeting radar was locked on you instead of us. I brought home 23 wounded that night. 19 survived. They have kids now, careers, lives. Phoenix's voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. My little brother was on one of those choppers. He's a lawyer now, married, 2 daughters. He doesn't know your name, it's all classified, but I do. I've been waiting 3 years for a chance to fly with you, to say thank you properly. Viper pulled something from his pocket, a patch custom-made showing a stylized widow spider with wings spread wide. Beneath it, one word, Guardian. We're your crew, Commander. We know the mission. We know the odds. We volunteered because if anyone can thread that impossible needle, it's you. We trust you with our lives because you've already proven you value them more than your own. Ava took the patch with shaking hands. Her throat worked silently for several seconds before she found words. I failed them. Your brothers, your friends, they died because I wasn't good enough, wasn't fast enough. They died because war is hell and bad intelligence is murder, Kale cut in. You gave them fighting chance. Some got it, some didn't. That's combat. But those medevac crews, those 163 soldiers, they lived because of choices you made in seconds most people would spend frozen in terror. He pulled out a tablet, called up footage. Helmet cam from one of the ground troops that night. The perspective shaky, showing wounded men being loaded onto helicopters under fire. Then in the distance, a fighter aircraft silhouetted against tracer fire, moving like it was dancing, pulling missiles away from the vulnerable transports. Someone off camera, voice breaking. Who the fuck is that pilot? Another voice, awed. That's Widow. That's fucking Widow. She's buying us time. Footage jumped. An explosion too close, the camera tumbling. When it stabilized, the same voice now praying. Please get out, please. The F-22 on screen pulled up impossibly steep missile contrails corkscrewing beneath it, so close the heat bloom whited out the image. When it cleared, the fighter was gone, swallowed by darkness and speed. They didn't just survive, Kale said. They went home and told their families about the pilot who wouldn't leave them behind. Those stories spread. Other pilots heard them. That's why your call sign means what it means now, not death but protection. Not what you've lost, but what you've saved. Ava's fingers traced the embroidered spider on the patch, and something in her posture shifted. The weight she'd been carrying, guilt, trauma, identity, loss, didn't vanish, but it redistributed, became load-bearing instead of crushing. 6 hours, she said quietly. I'll need 3 to prep the bird, 2 to run sims, 1 to, she hesitated, 1 to call Emma, tell her mommy has to work late. Tell her the truth, Kale said. Age-appropriate version, but the truth. She drew you in a cockpit for a reason. Kids know things. Ava nodded slowly, then turned to her new crew. Viper, I need your eyes on avionics. This mission timing is going to be tighter than anything you've flown. Hammer weapons loadout needs to be minimal. Every pound counts for fuel calculations. Ghost, I want you on countermeasures, redundant systems, anything that can give us an edge if we get lit up. Phoenix, you're my co-pilot. 2-seater F-22 variant because this approach requires 1 person flying and 1 person managing threat radar full-time. They nodded in unison, professional and precise. This was what they knew, what they'd trained for. But underneath the military bearing, something else transmitted, gratitude, respect, and the particular bond of people who'd shared the worst moments and come out alive. As they dispersed to their tasks, Kale caught Ava's arm gently. One more thing. The mission designation is Operation Widow's Walk. Not my choice, it came from the Joint Chiefs. When they saw the flight plan, when they understood what we were asking, that's what they called it. They know who you are, Commander. They know what you can do. Ava looked at him for a long moment, reading the subtext, the politics, the weight of institutional acknowledgement that came 3 years too late. If I do this, she said carefully, I want the real after-action report unsealed. I want Chen, Jackson, and Ramirez's families to know the truth about that night. I want them to know their sons and husbands didn't die because of pilot error. They died trying to save ground troops while command hung them out with bad intelligence. They deserve that much. Kale's expression hardened with satisfaction. Already done. The order's signed, just waiting for mission completion to unseal. You bring those contractors home and the truth comes with you. They shook hands, and in that grip passed an understanding that transcended rank or protocol. 2 people who'd both made impossible choices in impossible circumstances, who'd both been broken by the cost of duty and were choosing to stand anyway. As Kale walked away, Ava turned back to her F-22, but now she wasn't looking at it as a mechanic. She was looking at it as a pilot looks at their aircraft, partner, weapon, and promise all at once. Her fingers found the new patch Viper had given her, traced the embroidered spider, and she thought about Emma's drawing. Maybe children did know things adults forgot. Maybe somewhere in her daughter's understanding, the truth had always been visible. She climbed into the cockpit for the first time in 11 months, and the moment her hands touched the controls, muscle memory awakened. The stick knew her grip. The throttle remembered her touch. And sitting there, surrounded by instruments and displays that felt more like home than any house she'd lived in, Ava Ruiz finally admitted what she'd been denying for 3 years. She wasn't a mechanic who used to fly. She was a pilot who'd been in hiding. Time to come out. Time to fly. Time to save 6 lives and maybe, in the process, recover the one piece of herself she'd thought was lost forever. The mission clock started now. 3 hours later, the briefing room hummed with contained tension. Ava stood before a 3-dimensional holographic map that showed terrain so hostile it looked like the Earth's scar tissue. Mountains jutted 12,000 feet, their peaks forming natural radar barriers that created exactly one viable approach vector. A canyon system so narrow and twisting that on the map it resembled a snake's digestive tract. "This is the Coast Guard's Pass," she began, laser pointer tracking the route. "The target compound sits here, at the eastern terminus, surrounded by overlapping fields of fire from S-400 and Pantsir systems. Russian-made, Iranian-operated, calibrated to detect anything larger than a bird at altitudes above 50 feet. Conventional strike packages can't penetrate without starting a shooting war." She zoomed the display. "But during daily afternoon winds, a sandstorm rolls through this valley. For 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, particulate density creates radar scatter that degrades targeting solutions. Not enough to hide us, but enough to create ambiguity. They'll see something but won't know exactly what until we're already past." Viper studied the terrain with the focus of someone calculating survival margins. "That canyon's 17 meters wide at the narrowest point. The F-22's wingspan is 13.6 meters. That's giving us less than 2 meters clearance per side at combat speed." 1.7 meters, Ava corrected quietly. "I measured, and we won't be at combat speed, we'll be supersonic. Mach 1.2 means we're covering that canyon in under 90 seconds, which is the only reason this works. Any slower and their radar burn-through catches us. Any faster and we can't make the turns." Hammer leaned forward. "What's our weapons package?" "Minimal," Ava said. 2 GBU-39 small-diameter bombs for the compound walls, 1 AIM-120 AMRAAM in case we get bounced on egress. Everything else is fuel. We'll be running so lean that our margin for error is measured in seconds of afterburner. Miss our window, make 1 extra evasion, and we glide home." Ghost whistled low. "And the extraction itself?" Kale stepped forward, taking over that portion. "Ground team is already staged 3 miles from the compound. 12 Delta operators who have been in-country for 6 weeks, providing eyes, on and waiting for a strike window. When Commander Ruiz puts those GBU-39s through the compound's east and west walls, the explosion will create 30 seconds of chaos. That's when Delta moves. They'll be in, secure the contractors, and out in under 4 minutes. Except they'll have to cross 3 miles of open desert to the extraction point," Phoenix noted. "Under fire, carrying potentially wounded personnel." "Which is why we don't leave," Ava said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "The mission profile shows us egressing immediately after the strike, but that's not how this works. Those contractors, that Delta team, they'll need air support during the extraction. We stay in the area, high and fast, running interference." Kale's expression had gone carefully neutral. "Commander, that's not part of the approved." "Sir, respectfully, the approved mission gets the contractors out of the compound but doesn't get them home. The moment those walls blow, every hostile within 10 miles will converge on the extraction point. Delta's good, but they can't fight off a battalion-strength response while carrying 6 civilians. They'll need us overhead, suppressing ground fire, keeping the enemy guessing. The silence that followed was heavy with calculation. Kale was weighing risk against reward, political cost against moral imperative. You stay in hostile airspace, you're exposed. That S-400 network will recalibrate. The sandstorm won't provide cover indefinitely. I know, Ava said, but those medevac pilots stayed over the LZ in Kandahar for me. Took ground fire for 19 minutes while I drew off the SAMs. Turnabout's fair play, Admiral. We don't leave people behind. Viper, Hammer, Ghost, and Phoenix exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them, and then Viper spoke. We're in, whatever the commander needs. Kale studied them for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll clear it with CENTCOM, but understand this doubles your exposure time, doubles your risk. If something goes wrong, extraction options for you become extremely limited. Noted, sir, Ava said. Now let's talk about the flying itself. Phoenix, you're managing threat radar and countermeasures. The moment we enter that canyon, you'll be tracking 18 separate radar installations. Our route keeps us in their scan shadow most of the time, but there are 3 points here, here, and here, where we'll ping their systems for 2 to 3 seconds each. Those are our critical windows. She highlighted the spots on the map. At each point, you'll deploy chaff and electronic countermeasures on my mark. Timing has to be perfect. Too early and we waste our defensive aids before they're needed. Too late and we take a missile. Phoenix nodded, already making notes. What's our altitude profile through the canyon? 12 feet AGL, Ava said. Ground level altitude, the distance between the aircraft and the actual terrain. We'll be threading the needle between canyon floor and minimum safe clearance. The flight computer will scream at us the entire way. Ignore it. Trust the instruments, trust your training, and trust me. Hammer raised his hand. Ground effect at that altitude and speed. How are you compensating for lift variations? It was a good question, the kind only experienced pilots asked. Ground effect, the cushion of compressed air that forms between a wing and the surface, could be ally or enemy at extreme low altitude. The F-22's fly-by-wire system will auto-adjust, but I'll be flying partially manual to stay ahead of the corrections. The terrain rises and falls 40 meters in some sections. We'll be riding that roller coaster at supersonic speeds, which means anticipating the landscape 3 seconds ahead of where we are. She pulled up a simulation, and the room watched in silence as the computer-generated F-22 threaded through the canyon system. The walls blurred past in brown and gray streaks. The aircraft rolled knife-edge through one section, inverted through another, pulling G-forces that would crush most pilots into unconsciousness. The simulation ended with the aircraft emerging from the canyon, climbing hard and putting 2 bombs through the compound walls with surgical precision. We've run this 417 times in simulation, Ava said. I've crashed it 53 times. Phoenix has crashed it 61. But our last 100 runs have been clean and our last 50 have been perfect. We know this route. We know these systems. We know what we're doing. Ghost leaned back, expression thoughtful. What are the variables we can't control? What's the X factor that turns this from possible to impossible? Ava appreciated the question. It showed tactical thinking beyond rote execution. Weather. The sandstorm has to happen on schedule and with sufficient intensity. Too little particulate and we're naked on their radar. Too much and we can't see to navigate. We have a weather bird overhead monitoring conditions, but ultimately it's a judgment call. Your judgment call, Kale said. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. We'll be holding at the initial point 5 minutes out from canyon entry. When the sandstorm hits optimal density, we go. If conditions aren't right, we abort and try again tomorrow. But we only get 3 days before the execution deadline, which means 3 chances to get the weather window right. Viper studied the tactical display with the intensity of someone looking for lethal gaps. What about the egress? Assuming we stay for air support like you want, how do we get out? Ava's smile was thin and sharp. Fast and low, same as we came in. But on the way out, they'll know we're there. They'll be hunting. So we use their own radar network against them. There's a blind spot here, she indicated a section of terrain, where 2 radar installations coverage zones overlap. The computer algorithms create a gap trying to reconcile the conflicting data. We egress through that gap at treetop level, supersonic, and we don't stop until we're over friendly airspace. If they launch fighters, Phoenix asked. Then things get interesting, Ava admitted. The nearest enemy airbase is here 14 minutes away. We'll have Delta's extraction complete and be egressing before enemy air can intercept, but it'll be close. If we do get bounced, we have one AMRAAM and superior maneuverability. The F-22 can outturn, outclimb, and outrun anything they'll throw at us, but in a knife fight, luck matters as much as skill. Hammer grinned. Good thing we're flying with Widow then. I hear she makes her own luck. The tension in the room broke slightly, dark humor doing what it always did in military spaces, making the unbearable bearable. Ava felt it too, the shift from briefing to bonding, from strangers to crew. These people believed in her. That mattered more than she'd realized. Cale checked his watch. 2 hours to final prep. Commander Ruiz, you have priority access to the simulator for practice runs. I want you walking through this blindfolded. Everyone else, check your gear, get food, get rest. This is a night mission, wheels up at 2200 hours. Questions? No one spoke. The mission was insane, the odds were terrible, and everyone in the room knew it. But they also knew that sometimes impossible was just another word for necessary. As the crew filed out, Ava remained behind, staring at the holographic canyon. She reached out, fingers passing through the projected light, tracing the route she'd soon fly for real. Second thoughts, Cale's voice came from behind her. Third and fourth thoughts, Ava admitted. But Emma drew me flying through stars. I can't let her down. Can't let those contractors down. Can't let the people who believe in me down. And yourself, Ava turned, met his eyes. I let myself down 3 years ago when I stopped flying. When I let fear and guilt turn me into something smaller than I was. This mission, it's not about redemption. It's about remembering who I am, who I was, who I still could be. Cale nodded slowly. Your daughter will be proud of you. Whether you come back or not, she'll know her mother flew into hell to save people who needed saving. That's a legacy most people never leave. I plan on coming back, Ava said firmly. I plan on hugging Emma, telling her about the stars I flew through, and then taking her for ice cream. In that order. Then make it happen, Commander. Show them all what Widow really means. He left her there, alone with the projected canyon and her thoughts. Ava ran the simulation one more time, watching her avatar slip through impossible spaces, threading needles at speeds that defied belief. Somewhere in that canyon her future waited, success or failure, life or death, redemption or just another tragedy. But for the first time in 3 years she felt ready to find out which. The simulator beckoned. She had 2 hours to practice dying so she could learn how to live. Time to get to work. The next 90 minutes blurred past in a fugue state of muscle memory and concentration. Ava ran the canyon simulation 19 times, crashed twice, both times due to overcompensation in the third hairpin turn, and then executed 12 perfect runs in a row. Her hands moved across the controls like a pianist finding long-forgotten music, each input precise and economical. Phoenix joined her for the final 6 runs, settling into the back seat position and managing the threat radar with quiet competence. They developed a rhythm, a call-and-response pattern that felt almost musical. Radar lock, bearing 270, 18 seconds to acquisition, Phoenix would announce, voice calm despite the simulated death bearing down on them. Chaff and jam on my mark, Ava would reply, fingers dancing across the stick. 3, 2, 1 mark. The simulation would show electronic countermeasures blooming, radar signatures fracturing into false targets, the SAM system losing lock just as the F-22 slipped behind the next terrain mask. Perfect timing, perfect execution, inhuman precision that somehow felt entirely human. You're good at this, Phoenix said after they'd completed a run that shaved 3 seconds off their best time. Really good. I see why they tell stories about you. Ava powered down the simulator, pulled off her helmet. Her hair was plastered to her scalp with sweat despite the climate control. I used to be better. Before Kandahar, I could fly this kind of profile in my sleep. Now I'm having to think about things that used to be instinct. That's probably better, Phoenix countered. Instinct is great until circumstances change. Conscious competence means you can adapt, and adaptation is what keeps you alive when the mission goes sideways. It was a perspective Ava hadn't considered. Maybe her time away from the cockpit hadn't eroded her skills. Maybe it had refined them, forced her to rebuild capability from first principles instead of relying on reflexes that might fail under stress. "How long have you been flying?" Ava asked as they walked from the simulator bay. Phoenix considered. 12 years commissioned, but I've been flying since I was 16. My dad was a crop duster in Montana. Taught me in a beat-up Cessna that probably should have been grounded for safety violations. Best education I ever got. You learn a lot about aircraft behavior when you're flying something that's held together with duct tape and prayer. Ava smiled despite the tension. My father was Navy, F-14 pilot 2 tour in the Gulf. I grew up on stories about dogfights and carrier landings. Knew I wanted to fly before I knew I wanted anything else. The day I got my wings, he saluted me. Just once, no words, but it was the proudest moment of my life. He know about this mission. He died 4 years ago, Ava said quietly. Heart attack, sudden. Never got to tell him about Kandahar, about the grounding, about Emma. Sometimes I'm grateful for that. He saw me as a pilot, uncomplicated and unbroken. I'd like to think he still does, wherever he is. They walked in silence through the corridors of the airbase. Around them, the nighttime operations cycle hummed, maintenance crews prepping aircraft, intelligence officers reviewing satellite feeds, logistics personnel staging equipment. The machinery of war, grinding on as it always did. In the distance, Ava could see her F-22 under floodlights, Viper and Hammer working over it with meticulous attention. From this angle, the aircraft looked predatory and graceful simultaneously, a Raptor in truth as well as name. I need to call Emma, Ava said. Before we spin up, need to hear her voice. Phoenix nodded understanding. Use the ready room. I'll make sure you're not disturbed. The ready room was small, designed for pilots to grab moments of rest between missions. Ava settled into a worn chair, pulled out her phone, and stared at Emma's contact photo for several seconds before dialing. 3 rings. Then a voice, high and clear and so perfectly innocent that it hurt. "Mommy, Mrs. Rodriguez said you might call." "Hey, baby," Ava said, and her voice cracked slightly despite her best efforts. "I wanted to hear your voice before work gets crazy. How was school?" Emma launched into a 7-year-old stream of consciousness narrative, something about a substitute teacher, a science project involving volcanoes, her friend Madison's birthday party. Ava closed her eyes and let the words wash over her, memorizing the cadence, the enthusiasm, the particular way Emma said basically before every other sentence. "And I drew another picture," Emma said. "It's you flying a spaceship this time, but it's also kind of a plane. I used the silver marker for the wings." "I'd love to see it when I get home," Ava said. "Baby, I need to tell you something. I have to work late tonight. Maybe tomorrow too. But I promise I'll be home soon, and when I am, we'll do something special. Your choice. Zoo, movies, ice cream for dinner, anything you want." "Are you flying?" Emma's question was direct, guileless, but it landed like a punch. Ava had never told her daughter about the grounding, had never explained why she'd gone from pilot to mechanic. In Emma's mind, Mommy fixed planes, nothing more complicated. "Yes," Ava said, deciding in that moment to honor Kale's advice. Truth, age-appropriate, but truth nonetheless. "I'm flying tonight. There are some people who need help, and I'm one of the only pilots who can reach them. It's important work, baby. It's what I trained for. Like a superhero mission." Emma's voice rose with excitement rather than fear. At 7, danger was still abstract, heroism still simple. "Like a superhero mission," Ava confirmed, smiling despite the tightness in her chest. "And when I come home, I'll tell you all about flying through the stars." "I knew you'd fly again," Emma said with absolute certainty. "In my dream, you had silver wings and you were saving people." "Mrs. Rodriguez says dreams are just our brains being silly, but I think they're real sometimes. I think you're going to save people, Mommy." Tears tracked down Ava's face, silent and unexpected. "I love you so much, Emma, more than all the stars. You remember that, okay? No matter what, you remember that I love you." "I love you more than all the stars and all the planets and all the space between them," Emma replied. It was their ritual, their call and response, and hearing it now felt like armor and wound simultaneously. "Be safe, Mommy. I'll draw you more pictures." They said goodbye, and Ava sat holding the silent phone for several minutes afterward. The mission had been abstract until now: tactical problems, flight parameters, risk calculations. But Emma's voice made it real, made the stakes concrete. She wasn't just risking her life. She was risking her daughter's future, betting everything on her ability to thread impossible needles and defy fatal odds. And yet, she thought, wasn't that exactly what parenthood demanded? Making impossible choices, taking calculated risks, doing dangerous things so that children could grow up in a world where heroes existed and hope wasn't foolish. Emma had drawn her flying through stars because somewhere in her 7-year-old wisdom, she understood what Ava had forgotten, that some people were meant to fly, and fighting against that truth only created a different kind of danger. A knock at the door. Viper's voice. "Commander, birds ready. Final checks complete. We're 30 minutes from briefing." Ava wiped her face, straightened her flight suit, and stood. The woman who'd been crying a moment ago vanished, replaced by Lieutenant Commander Ava Ruiz, call sign Widow, one of the most dangerous pilots alive. Time to remind the world why that call sign meant protection instead of death. Time to fly through stars and save lives and come home to draw pictures with her daughter. In exactly that order. She stepped into the corridor, and the mission clock started counting down. The final briefing was short and professional. Kale stood before a live satellite feed showing the target compound, a sprawling concrete structure that looked more like a bunker than a building. 6 orange jumpsuits were visible in the courtyard, 6 human beings whose remaining life expectancy was measured in hours unless something changed. Latest intel confirms all 6 contractors are alive and held in the eastern building, Kale said. Delta team is in position. Weatherbird confirms the sandstorm is building on schedule. We have a green light across all mission parameters. Commander Ruiz, you're authorized to execute at your discretion. Rules of engagement are weapons-free on any threat to the package or extraction team. Priority is getting our people home. Everything else is secondary. Ava studied the satellite feed, committing the layout to memory. The compound sat in a natural bowl, surrounded by ridgelines that would make conventional approach impossible. The canyon she'd be threading emptied into that bowl from the west, a shooting gallery if anyone saw them coming, but their only viable route if they didn't. Time on target is 23:15 local, she said. Sandstorm reaches optimal density at 23:12, giving us a 3-minute window for final approach. Delta moves on the explosion. We provide overwatch during extraction, then egress through the northern gap in the radar network. Flight time to target is 43 minutes. Questions? Her crew shook their heads. They'd been briefed, rebriefed, and knew the plan better than they knew their own names. This was just ritual now, the formal acknowledgement that they were committed. "Sir," Ava said, turning to Kale, "permission to address the broader tactical team." He nodded, and Ava activated the comms system that connected her to the Delta operators staged in the desert. "Delta 1, this is Raptor lead. Can you confirm comms?" A voice crackled back, rough with desert wind and adrenaline. "Raptor lead, Delta 1. We read you 5x5. Hell of a flight plan you got there. We'll be listening to you thread that needle from here. Delta 1, understand you've been sitting on this target for 6 weeks. I need ground truth. Any changes to compound layout, guard patterns, or defensive positions since the last update?" "Negative, Raptor. Enemy is comfortable, predictable. 8 guards on rotating patrol, command structure inside. They don't expect trouble. Why would they? We're in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by air defense that could shoot down God himself." "They're about to learn that God's got good pilots," Ava replied, and heard rough laughter over the comms. "Delta 1, be advised we're staying for the extraction. You'll have air support until you're clear." A pause. "Say again, Raptor. Mission profile shows you egressing immediately after the strike." "Mission profile changed. We don't leave people behind. You cover the ground, we'll cover the air. Between us, we'll get everyone home." Another pause, longer this time. Then, "Roger that, Raptor. Appreciate the overwatch. We'll move fast, but there's going to be a hornet's nest once those walls blow. Stay frosty up there." You too, Delta. See you on the other side. She cut the connection and found Kale watching her with an expression that might have been approval or resignation, hard to tell which. You're rewriting the mission again, Commander. I'm completing it properly, sir, Ava corrected. With respect, whoever designed the original profile never spent time in a cockpit during a hot extraction. I know what Delta's going to face down there. They need us. Kale studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Then make it count. Bring them home, all of them, including yourself. Yes, sir. She turned to her crew. Gear up. Walk around in 10, then we spin up. This is real world now. Simulator's over. From here on, every decision matters. They dispersed to final preparations, and Ava found herself alone again with the satellite feed. Those 6 orange jumpsuits haunted her, anonymous at this distance but undoubtedly terrified up close. Men and women who'd gone to work one morning and ended up in hell. They were somebody's children, somebody's parents, somebody's reason for living. Like Emma was hers. She touched the spider patch on her flight suit, felt the raised embroidery under her fingers, and made a promise to those distant orange figures. I'm coming. Hold on just a little longer. I'm coming. The hangar floor gleamed under harsh lights as Ava approached her aircraft. The F-22 sat like a coiled predator, angular and aggressive, its stealth geometry giving it an otherworldly appearance. Maintenance crews had polished it until the skin seemed to drink light rather than reflect it. Viper appeared beside her, tablet in hand. Final systems check complete. Avionics are green across the board. I did find a minor hydraulic pressure fluctuation in the starboard aileron actuator, fixed it, but I wanted you aware. Response time might be 8 milliseconds slower than port side. Not enough to affect handling, but in that canyon you'll want to compensate left slightly. Noted, Ava said, appreciating the attention to detail. 8 milliseconds at supersonic speeds translated to inches of travel, potentially fatal inches if she didn't account for them. Hammer approached from the other side. Weapons are loaded and safed. 2 GBU-39s on the center line, 1 AMRAAM on the starboard rail. Total weight is below max thrust-to-weight ratio for the flight profile. You'll have the performance you need. Ghost handed her a small device. Custom countermeasure profile loaded into your defensive systems. It's based on known S-400 tracking algorithms, specifically tuned to the frequency hopping they use. In theory, it'll buy you an extra 2 seconds of confusion if they get a solid lock. In practice, he shrugged, we'll find out. Comforting, Ava said dryly, but she was smiling. This was her tribe, people who understood that the difference between life and death often came down to milliseconds and preparation. Phoenix joined them, carrying 2 helmets. She handed one to Ava. I programmed our comms presets and double-checked the threat library. We'll be able to identify and classify any radar emission within seconds. I also loaded some music on the secondary channel, nothing distracting, just some ambient instrumental in case we need to calm our nervous systems during long stretches. My instructor taught me that trick. Sometimes the best countermeasure to stress is Mozart. Ava laughed, genuine and surprised. Mozart in a combat zone, that's a new one. Only if things go according to plan, Phoenix countered. If things go sideways, we'll stick to tactical brevity codes and aggressive profanity. They ran the walk-around together, Ava's hands and eyes checking every surface, every panel, every access point. This was ritual as much as inspection, the pilot's way of bonding with the machine, of establishing trust. She found no faults. The aircraft was perfect, a mechanical extension of her will, waiting to prove what they could do together. Kale appeared as she was climbing the ladder to the cockpit. One last thing, Commander. If at any point the mission becomes unviable, if the odds turn from bad to impossible, you are authorized to abort. Bring yourself and your crew home. Those contractors will find another way, but I need you back here. The Air Force needs you. Your daughter needs you. Ava paused, 1 foot on the ladder, and looked down at him. Sir, with respect, there is no other way. This is the only window we'll get. If I abort, those 6 people die on camera in 48 hours and their families have to watch. I can't carry that, I won't carry that. Even if, she cut him off. I made peace with the cost before I agreed to this. Whatever happens in that canyon, in that compound, it happens because I chose it. That's on me. But I need you to promise me something in return." Kale's eyes narrowed. "What?" "If I don't make it back, you tell Emma the truth. Not some sanitized version, not some heroic myth. You tell her I flew into danger to save people who needed saving. You tell her I wasn't perfect, wasn't fearless, but I went anyway. You tell her that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's flying despite it." "She already knows that," Kale said quietly. "She drew you with wings. She sees you exactly as you are, a hero who's also her mother. Don't disappoint her by not coming home." They held eye contact for a moment longer, and then Ava nodded once and climbed into the cockpit. The seat embraced her like an old friend, the harness settling across her shoulders with familiar weight. Phoenix climbed into the back seat, and together they ran the pre-flight checklist, fingers dancing across switches and buttons in a choreographed sequence honed by thousands of hours. "Engines starting," Ava announced, and the twin Pratt and Whitney turbofans spooled to life with a rising whine that became a sustained roar. The aircraft trembled with contained power, eager to fly. "Raptor lead tower," the radio crackled. "You are cleared to taxi. Active runway 27, winds 240 at 8 knots, altimeter 30.12. Godspeed, Widow." She released the brakes and felt the F-22 roll forward, 60,000 pounds of technology responding to her slightest input. The taxiway lights blurred past, yellow and blue guiding her to the runway threshold. At the hold short line, she stopped and ran final checks. Everything was green. Everything was ready. Behind her, Phoenix's breathing was steady over the intercom. Calm. Professional, trusting. "Tower Raptor lead, ready for departure. Raptor lead, you are cleared for takeoff. Godspeed." Ava advanced the throttles smoothly, felt the engine surge from idle to military power, then pushed forward into afterburner. The acceleration pressed her back into the seat with crushing force, gravity's reminder that what they were about to do defied natural law. The runway lights became a solid blur. Airspeed climbed rapidly, 60 knots, 80, 120. At 145 knots, she pulled back gently on the stick, and the F-22 leaped into the night sky like it had been longing to escape Earth's embrace. Gear up, flaps up, accelerating through 300 knots, climbing at 4,000 feet per minute. The airbase fell away beneath them, lights shrinking to insignificance as darkness swallowed everything except the instruments and the infinite sky ahead. "Raptor lead is airborne," Ava transmitted. "Proceeding to initial point. Time to target 39 minutes. Roger, Raptor. Intel updated. Sandstorm is building nicely. You're cleared hot. Bring them home." Ava didn't reply, just focused on the flight, on the choreography of speed and altitude and heading that would deliver them to the canyon mouth at exactly the right moment. Beside her, the stars wheeled overhead, cold and distant and beautiful. Somewhere among them, Emma believed her mother was a hero. Time to prove her right. Time to fly through stars and save lives. Time to remember what widow really meant. The mission clock read 38 minutes and counting. Ahead, in darkness and desert and danger, 6 people waited for a miracle. She was bringing them one, wrapped in carbon fiber and thrust and a mother's determination to come home. The F-22 climbed higher, faster, and disappeared into the night. The flight to the initial point passed in focused silence, broken only by radio checks and navigation updates. Ava flew on instruments, trusting the displays more than her eyes in the moonless dark. At 30,000 feet, the world below was invisible, just an absence of light where she knew mountains and valleys carved the earth into hostile terrain. 20 minutes out, Phoenix spoke. "Threat radar active. I'm painting 17 distinct installations. S-400 primary coverage, Pantsir short-range supplements, and what looks like at least 3 mobile units patrolling. They're scanning but not focused. We're outside their interest zone for now. Keep monitoring," Ava said. "The moment we drop into that canyon, we'll light up every screen they have. I need constant updates on tracking status." "Roger that. I've got the countermeasure profiles loaded and ready." "First chaff bundle deploys on your mark at Checkpoint Alpha." Checkpoint Alpha, the first of 3 critical moments where the canyon walls briefly opened enough to expose them to radar. Timing would be everything. 30 seconds early or late and the sophisticated computer systems would lock them before countermeasures deployed. Delta 1, Raptor lead, Ava transmitted. We're 15 minutes from initial point. Confirm target status. The Delta commander's voice came back tense but controlled. Raptor Delta 1, no changes. Guards are maintaining normal pattern. Contractors are visible in the courtyard. All 6 confirmed alive. We're ready to move on your signal. Roger, stand by for final approach. We'll be going silent once we commit. You'll know when the party starts. Copy that. We'll be listening for the thunder. Ava allowed herself a thin smile. Thunder. That was one word for what was about to happen. Another word was controlled violence, the kind that saved lives by ending threats with surgical precision. 10 minutes. She began the descent, throttling back and letting gravity help them down. The altimeter unwound rapidly. 25,000 feet, 2015. At 10,000, she leveled off and began a wide orbit around the initial point, a GPS coordinate that represented the last moment of relative safety before commitment. Weather bird, Raptor lead, she transmitted. Request update on sandstorm status. A different voice, female and clinical. Raptor weather bird, storm is tracking perfectly. Particulate density at the compound will reach optimal levels in approximately 14 minutes. You have a 3-minute window of maximum coverage. Any earlier and density is insufficient. Any later and wind shifts will clear the area. 14 minutes. Ava checked the mission clock. That put them exactly on timeline. Everything was aligning with terrible precision. Phoenix, pull up the canyon navigation overlay. Let's verify waypoints one more time. The display in front of her populated with the 3-dimensional route, a twisting path through stone that looked more like a nightmare than a flight plan. 17 waypoints marked critical turn points, each one requiring precise bank angles and G-loading to navigate at speed. Waypoints confirmed, Phoenix said. I'm seeing good GPS signal. We'll have accurate positioning throughout. Backup inertial navigation is synced and ready if we lose satellite. Ava ran through the mental checklist one final time. Fuel, sufficient with minimal margin. Weapons, armed and ready. Countermeasures, loaded and programmed. Crew, trained and trusting. Aircraft, performing flawlessly. Risk, astronomical but calculated. She thought about Emma's drawing about silver wings and stars and a child's absolute faith that her mother would come home. That faith was armor and burden both, protection and weight. But Ava had learned long ago that the heaviest loads made you stronger if they didn't break you first. Raptor lead to all stations, she transmitted. We're 10 minutes from commit, final status checks. One by one the voices came back. Delta 1 ready. Weather bird, conditions optimal. Tower, we're tracking you. Good hunting, Widow. And from her back seat, Phoenix's quiet voice. Ready when you are, Commander. Let's go save some people. Ava took a breath, held it, released it slowly. This was the moment, the final second before possibility collapsed into reality, when the mission transformed from plan to execution. She rolled the F-22 onto its back, pulled the nose through until they were inverted and pointed down, and then rolled upright in a maneuver that positioned them perfectly on the approach vector. Raptor lead is committing, she announced. Going silent. See you on the other side. She switched off the radio, and suddenly the cockpit was quiet except for the engine's steady roar and the whisper of air over the canopy. Ahead, invisible in darkness, the canyon waited. She pushed the throttles forward, felt the F-22 accelerate into the night, and committed herself and her crew and 6 unknown lives to a dance with death that would be decided in the next 15 minutes. The altimeter unwound rapidly as they descended. 8,000 feet, 6,000, 4,000. The terrain following radar painted the ground approaching at terrifying speed. At 2,000 feet, she pulled level and began accelerating horizontally, building speed for the canyon entry. Mach 0.9. Mach 1. The aircraft shuddered slightly as they transitioned through the sound barrier, and then they were supersonic, pushing toward Mach 1.2, eating distance at 20 miles per minute. Canyon mouth in 90 seconds, Phoenix announced, voice professionally calm despite the insanity of what they were about to attempt. Ava's hands found their positions on the controls, light touch, anticipating rather than reacting. At this speed, Any overcorrection would smear them across canyon walls before she could process the mistake. The terrain following radar showed the canyon mouth approaching, a dark gash in the mountains that suddenly filled her entire field of view. "Entering canyon now," she said, and the world transformed. One moment they were in open air, the next they were threading between walls of stone that seemed close enough to touch. The aircraft's collision avoidance system screamed warnings, showing impacts everywhere, but Ava ignored it. The computer thought they were going to die. The computer was wrong. She banked left through the first turn, feeling the G-forces build, 3GS-4-5 pressing them into their seats. The canyon wall blurred past her canopy with inches to spare. She rolled level, pushed the nose down slightly to account for the descending canyon floor, then immediately banked right for the second turn. "Checkpoint Alpha in 10 seconds, Phoenix warned. Multiple radar tracks attempting acquisition. The walls opened briefly, a widening in the canyon that was still narrow by any sane measure, but felt like a valley compared to what they'd just threaded. For 3 seconds, they were exposed to radar installations on the ridgelines above. "Mark," Ava commanded, and Phoenix deployed chaff and electronic jamming. The defensive aide's computer showed their radar signature fracturing into dozens of false targets, confused data that would take precious seconds to resolve. By then, they were already through the opening and back into the narrow section, walls closing around them like a stone fist. "Clean," Phoenix reported. "They saw something but couldn't lock. We're clear." The canyon twisted like a serpent, and Ava flew it like she was reading its mind. Left, right, up, down, a three-dimensional puzzle solved at supersonic speeds with no room for error. Sweat ran down her back despite the climate control. Her breathing came faster, deeper, feeding oxygen to muscles tensed against G-forces. "Checkpoint Bravo approaching," Phoenix said. 30 seconds. This section was worse. The canyon narrowed further, down to those 17 meters that left them less than 2 meters of clearance per wingtip. The F-22's wingspan was fixed, but the canyon walls were irregular, jutting and receding in ways that made constant microcorrections necessary. Ava's hands moved in tiny increments, walking the stick left and right, keeping them centered in the diminishing space. Rock blurred past on both sides, brown and gray and ancient, indifferent to their survival. 10 seconds to Bravo. The walls opened again, wider this time, and Ava pulled up hard to clear a stone outcropping that thrust into the canyon like a natural bridge. They went inverted for 2 seconds, rolling through the gap, and she caught a glimpse of stars above before they were back in the canyon, right side up, accelerating hard. "Mark," Phoenix deployed countermeasures just as 2 separate S-400 systems achieved tracking lock. Missiles launched. Ava couldn't see them, but she felt them, that sixth sense combat pilots developed when death was airborne and hunting. "Vampire, vampire," Phoenix called, the code for hostile missiles inbound. 2 SA-21s tracking. Impact in 12 seconds. No time to think, only to act. Ava pulled the hardest brake turn of her life, crushing them both with 8 GS that grayed her vision and made her lungs scream. The F-22 rotated impossibly fast, bleeding speed and energy, trading them for angular displacement that the missile's tracking computers couldn't follow. The canyon wall rushed up. They were going to hit. And at the last microsecond, she rolled wings level and pulled through, the belly of the aircraft clearing the stone by less than 3 feet. Behind them, both missiles impacted the canyon wall where they'd been 2 seconds earlier. The explosion lit the night, shockwave buffeting them forward, adding 50 knots of speed they didn't need. "Clear," Phoenix shouted. "They're off us, but they know we're here now. Every radar in the network is going active." "Doesn't matter," Ava grunted, wrestling the aircraft back under control. "We're 30 seconds from target. They can't stop us now." The canyon straightened, a final run toward the compound, and she pushed the throttles to maximum afterburner. The F-22 leaped forward, acceleration pinning them brutally. Mach 1.3, Mach 1.4. "Target in sight," Phoenix called. "Lasing now." The targeting pod acquired the compound laser designation, painting 2 specific points on the east and west walls. The GBU-39 bomb's guidance systems locked on, computers calculating release parameters. 15 seconds, Ava counted down. 10, 5. She felt the bomb's release, the aircraft lightening suddenly as 2,000 pounds of precision ordnance fell away. Bombs followed ballistic arcs, fins adjusting microscopically, and then they disappeared into the sandstorm that now engulfed the compound. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Ava pulled up hard, climbing away from the canyon, gaining altitude and distance. Then the compound erupted. 2 simultaneous explosions, east and west walls disintegrating in fire and smoke. The shockwave reached them even at altitude, the aircraft jolting as compressed air from the blast caught up with their climb. Good hits, Phoenix reported. Both walls are down. Delta should be, the radio, silent until now, crackled to life. Raptor Delta 1, we're moving, targets acquired, extracting now. Ava couldn't answer. They'd agreed to radio silence to avoid giving away the ground team's position, but she smiled fiercely. The first part was done. Now came the hard part, keeping the ground team alive long enough to get clear. She leveled at 5,000 feet and looked down through the sandstorm. Thermal imaging showed heat signatures converging on the compound from all directions. Enemy reinforcements responding to the explosion. The contractors were visible as cooler signatures being half carried, half dragged by the warmer signatures of Delta operators in full kit. They're taking fire, Phoenix said, reading the display. Multiple hostiles engaging from the northern buildings. Ava rolled inverted and pulled the nose down, committing to a strafing run she knew was dangerous but couldn't avoid. The F-22 wasn't designed for close air support, but the 20mm cannon mounted in the wing root could still deliver enough firepower to suppress ground targets. Phoenix, talk me onto target. I need exact bearings, can't risk hitting friendlies. Roger, target cluster at your 11 o'clock, 200 meters north of the compound. Delta is clear to your 9 o'clock, moving south-southwest. Ava rolled wings level, acquired the target visually through the thermal sight and pressed the trigger. The cannon roared, vibrating the entire aircraft as 20 rounds per second tore down range. The ground below erupted in a line of impacts that walked across the enemy position with mechanical precision. The heat signatures scattered, some going still, others fleeing. Good effect, Phoenix reported. They're suppressed. Delta's moving faster now. But more enemy forces were arriving, trucks and armed personnel pouring into the area from staging points to the east. This was going to get worse before it got better. Ava pulled up, gained altitude, and began a racetrack pattern overhead, tight turns that kept them in position to engage threats while maintaining enough speed to stay unpredictable. Radar warning, Phoenix called. S-400 site to the northwest is tracking us. They're trying to get a firing solution, but our maneuvers are making it difficult. Keep them guessing, Ava said. I need 3 more minutes of air support, then we egress. How's Delta's position? 2 minutes to extraction point. But there's a problem, enemy trucks are moving to cut them off. If those vehicles get into position, Delta won't make it. Ava's mind raced through options. The AMRAAM missile was air-to-air, useless against ground targets. The cannon had limited ammunition remaining, and the enemy vehicles were moving fast, dust trails visible even through the sandstorm. Phoenix, designate the lead truck, I'm going kinetic. Kinetic meant using the aircraft itself as a weapon, or more precisely, using the shockwave from a supersonic pass to disrupt ground forces. It was dangerous, probably insane, but it might buy Delta the seconds they needed. She pushed the nose down, selected maximum afterburner, and dove toward the lead truck. The altimeter unwound rapidly, 4,000 feet, 3,000, 2,000. The truck grew in her windscreen, heat signature bright against the cool desert. At 500 feet, traveling at Mach 1.3, she pulled up hard. The sonic boom hit the ground like a hammer, a wall of compressed air traveling at the speed of sound. The lead truck swerved violently, tumbling off the road. The truck behind it tried to brake, crashed into debris. The convoy stalled, confused, buying precious time. Delta 1, Raptor lead, Ava transmitted, breaking radio silence. You've got 30 seconds clear, move now. Roger Raptor, we're at the extraction point, loading the package now. Ava circled overhead, watching the thermal signatures cluster at the designated coordinates. 6 cool signatures. The contractors were being loaded into vehicles as Delta provided covering fire. 30 seconds felt like an eternity. Then, Raptor, Delta 1. Package is secure. All 6 contractors recovered alive. We are mobile and egressing. Thank you for the cover. Recommend you get clear. This place is about to get very hot. Roger Delta, good hunting. Raptor is egressing. Ava rolled the F-22 onto the northern heading toward the radar gap she'd identified in the planning phase. Behind them, the compound was a distant glow, already being swallowed by the sandstorm and night. Phoenix, what's our threat picture? Multiple radars tracking. The S-400 site has a solid lock now. They're preparing to fire. We need to hit that radar gap in the next 60 seconds or we're going to take a missile. Ava pushed the throttles forward, accelerating through Mach 1.5. The aircraft shook with the strain. They were loaded light now, having expended the bombs, but the sustained high-G maneuvering had stressed systems and burned through fuel reserves. Fuel state, 3,200 pounds. Enough to make it home, if we don't have to maneuver much. Missile launch, Phoenix's voice went sharp. SA-21 inbound, 12 o'clock high, 40 seconds to impact. Ava didn't hesitate. She pulled the nose up vertical, going ballistic, climbing at a rate that defied belief. 5,000 feet, 10,000, 15,000. Vertical separation was their best defense against surface-to-air missiles optimized for horizontal intercepts. The missile followed, tracking them upward, but its energy was finite. At 28,000 feet, Ava rolled inverted and pulled back down, creating a vector the missile couldn't follow. It detonated 2,000 feet below them, shrapnel peppering the night but missing the aircraft. Clear, Phoenix reported. But they're firing again. 2 more missiles tracking. 10 seconds to the radar gap, Ava said through gritted teeth. Hold on. She pushed the nose down, diving back toward the Earth, bleeding altitude for speed. The missiles followed, closing fast. The radar gap was a narrow corridor between 2 installations, a computational blind spot created by overlapping coverage zones. If she could get into that corridor, the missiles would lose guidance data and go ballistic. 5 seconds. The missiles were 3 miles back and closing at Mach 3. She could see them on radar, could feel them hunting. 2 seconds. She rolled 90 degrees, pulled hard, and slipped sideways into the radar corridor exactly as the missiles reached lock range. Both weapons went stupid, tracking computers unable to reconcile the contradictory data from 2 radar sources. They flew past, missing by 500 meters, and detonated harmlessly in the distance. Clear, Phoenix exhaled hard. That was we're clear, no tracking, we're in the gap. Ava leveled the aircraft and finally let herself breathe. Her hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline dump and her flight suit was soaked through with sweat, but they were alive, they'd made it. Raptor lead to all stations, she transmitted. Package recovered. 6 contractors confirmed alive and in Delta custody. Mission successful. Raptor is egressing to friendly airspace. The radio erupted with voices, relief, congratulations, disbelief. Kale's voice cut through the chaos. Outstanding work, Commander. We're tracking your egress. Welcome back to the world of the living. Ava smiled, exhaustion and triumph mixing into something that felt almost like peace. Good to be back, sir. Raptor lead is RTB. See you in 90 minutes. She set course for home, and the F-22 settled into steady flight, the crisis over, the mission complete. Beside her, Phoenix was silent for a long moment before speaking. That was the most insane flying I've ever been part of, and I've been flying for 12 years. That was Tuesday, Ava replied, but she was smiling. Sometimes the job requires insane. The important thing is we made it count. 6 people are going home to their families tonight because we threaded some needles and defied some odds. Because you did, Phoenix corrected. I just managed the radar. You flew that canyon like you owned it. Ava thought about that, about ownership, capability, identity. For 3 years, she believed that Kandahar had broken something in her that couldn't be fixed, but tonight had proved otherwise. She wasn't broken. She was just a weapon that had been in storage, waiting for the right mission to remember its purpose. Let's go home, she said quietly. I've got a daughter who drew me flying through stars. Time to tell her she was right. The rest of the flight was quiet, routine, almost boring after the adrenaline of combat. They refueled from a tanker over friendly airspace, then continued the long transit back to base. As they crossed into Allied territory, Ava finally let herself relax, muscles unclenching incrementally as safety became real rather than theoretical. The sun was rising when they touched down, golden light painting the runway in shades of amber and orange. The F-22's wheels chirped against concrete, and Ava brought them to a smooth stop, engines spooling down after 2 hours of sustained high performance. The ground crew guided them to parking, and as the canopy rose, cool morning air flooded the cockpit. Ava pulled off her helmet and just sat for a moment, feeling the stillness, the solidity of Earth beneath the aircraft. Alive. Home. Successful. Phoenix climbed out first, legs shaky from the sustained G-forces and tension. Ava followed, and the moment her boots touched ground, the hangar erupted in applause. Maintenance crews, intelligence officers, pilots from other squadrons, they'd all gathered to witness the return. Kale stood at the front, and as Ava approached, he saluted. Not the casual salute of routine, but the formal, crisp acknowledgement of respect earned through action. Ava returned it, and then Kale was shaking her hand, gripping her shoulder. 6 contractors are alive because of you. Delta Team is intact because of you. You threaded an impossible needle and made it look routine. That's the definition of exceptional airmanship, Commander. Well done. It was a team effort, sir, Ava said, gesturing to Phoenix, Viper, Hammer, and Ghost. They made it possible. And you made it happen, Kale countered. Don't diminish what you accomplished tonight. You earned that call sign all over again. Widow doesn't mean death, it means protection. It means nobody dies on your watch. That's legacy, Commander. That's something worth building a career on. Ava felt emotion threatening to overwhelm her professional composure. The after-action report, sir. The unsealing of the Kandahar file. Already done, Kale said. The order was transmitted an hour ago. Chen, Jackson, and Ramirez's families will receive the full, unredacted account of what happened that night. They'll know their loved ones died heroes, not victims of pilot error. They'll know you tried to save them, succeeded with some, and have carried the cost ever since. Tears tracked down Ava's face, and she didn't try to hide them. 3 years of guilt, of wondering, of second-guessing. It didn't erase the pain, but it transformed it. The families would know the truth. That mattered more than she could articulate. Thank you, sir, she managed. Now go see your daughter, Kale said. You've been a pilot for the last 6 hours. Time to be a mother again. That's an order, Commander. Ava smiled through tears, saluted one final time, and walked toward the hangar exit. Behind her, the F-22 sat cooling in the morning light, a machine that had carried her through hell and brought her home whole. She touched its wing as she passed, a gesture of gratitude and farewell. The drive home was a blur, exhaustion and adrenaline crash warring for dominance. But when she opened the apartment door and saw Emma sitting at the kitchen table, drawing with fierce concentration, everything else fell away. Mommy. Emma launched herself across the room and Ava caught her, lifting her daughter and holding her tight enough to hurt. You came back, you flew through the stars. I flew through the stars, Ava confirmed, breathing in the scent of her daughter's hair, feeling the solid reality of her small body. And I saved some people, 6 people who get to go home to their families now. Emma pulled back, eyes wide. Were you scared? Terrified, Ava admitted. But I flew anyway. Because sometimes being brave means doing the scary thing because it's important. Emma considered this with 7-year-old seriousness, then nodded. That's what superheroes do. They get scared, but they help anyway. Exactly right, Ava said. Now show me what you've been drawing. Emma pulled her to the table where a new picture waited, this one showing 2 figures, one large and one small, both with silver wings flying through a sky full of stars. That's us, Emma explained. When I grow up, I'm going to fly planes too, just like you. We'll fly together. Ava looked at the drawing, at her daughter's absolute certainty, and felt something settle into place. She'd spent 3 years running from her identity as a pilot, believing that Kandahar had disqualified her from the role. But Emma saw through the guilt and trauma to the truth underneath. Her mother was a pilot, had always been a pilot, would always be a pilot. Not because of rank or assignment, but because some people were meant to fly, and denying that truth only created different kinds of damage. "I'd like that," Ava said quietly. "I'd like that very much." She pulled Emma close again, and they sat together in the morning light, studying the drawing of silver wings and impossible dreams. Somewhere across the world, 6 contractors were reuniting with their families. Somewhere in the bureaucracy, files were being unsealed and truth was being restored. And somewhere in a 7-year-old's imagination, a future was taking shape where mothers and daughters flew together through stars. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. Later, after Emma had gone to school and Ava had slept for 6 hours of dreamless exhaustion, she returned to base for the formal debrief. The conference room was packed. Intelligence officers, mission planners, senior leadership from 3 different commands. Kale sat at the head of the table, and as Ava entered, everyone stood. "Please sit," Kale said, and the room settled. "Commander Ruiz, we've been reviewing the mission telemetry and after-action reports from Delta Team. I'd like you to walk us through the critical decision points." For the next 2 hours, Ava detailed every aspect of the mission. The canyon approach, the radar evasion, the decision to stay for air support, the kinetic boom that disrupted the enemy convoy. She spoke professionally, clinically, but underneath the military brevity was the emotional truth of what it had meant to fly again, to remember her capability to save lives. When she finished, silence held the room for several seconds. Then an Air Force general Ava didn't recognize spoke. "Commander, I've been flying fighters for 30 years. I've logged 4,000 hours in combat zones. And I can say with absolute certainty that what you accomplished last night ranks among the most exceptional pieces of airmanship I've ever reviewed. That canyon approach alone should be taught at every fighter weapons school as the standard for precision flying under extreme conditions." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Ava felt heat rising in her cheeks but maintained composure. "Sir, I had an exceptional crew. Phoenix's radar management, Viper and Hammer's preparation, Ghost's countermeasure programming, it was a team success." "Led by an exceptional pilot," the general countered. "Don't diminish your role, Commander. Leadership, skill, and courage under fire, you demonstrated all 3, which brings me to the reason I'm here." He pulled out a folder, opened it to reveal orders. "Effective immediately, you're being reassigned from maintenance operations to a new joint task force specializing in high-risk personnel recovery. You'll be training pilots in extreme low-altitude penetration tactics and leading missions when conventional approaches fail. The position comes with a promotion to full commander and command of your own squadron." Ava stared at the orders, barely processing the words. A squadron. Her own command. A return not just to flying but to leadership. "Sir, my daughter, I'm a single parent. This kind of position requires. It requires someone with your unique skill set," Kale interrupted gently. "But it also comes with support infrastructure, flexible scheduling, priority for family housing, and a commitment that you won't be deployed more than 60 days per year. We're asking you to serve, Commander, but we're not asking you to sacrifice your daughter. That's non-negotiable." Ava looked around the room, saw respect and expectation in equal measure. These people believed in her. They were offering her a chance to rebuild her identity on her own terms, to be both the pilot she was meant to be and the mother Emma needed. "I accept," she said quietly. "On one condition." "Name it," the general said. "I want Chen brought in as my deputy commander and chief instructor. He taught at Top Gun, knows the systems, and deserves to be part of this. If I'm building a squadron, I want him helping shape it." The general smiled. "Done. He's already been contacted and accepted, said something about owing you a debt he could never repay, and this was a start." Emotion threatened to overwhelm Ava again, but she held it together through sheer willpower. Chen alive, teaching, and now working with her to train the next generation. The circle closing, the past and future connecting. "Thank you, sir," she managed. "All of you. It means everything." "You earned it, Commander," Kale said. "Now go build us a squadron that can do the impossible. God knows the world needs it." The debrief concluded with administrative details and congratulations, and then Ava found herself alone in the corridor, holding orders that represented a second chance she'd never expected to receive. Her phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Mrs. Rodriguez says you're going to fly planes again. Is it true? Can I come watch sometime? Ava smiled, typed back, it's true, and yes, you can watch. I'll even let you sit in the cockpit. Love you more than all the stars. The reply was immediate. Love you more than all the stars and all the space between them. Ava stood in the corridor, reading that message over and over, and felt the last piece of broken identity snap back into place. She was a pilot. She was a mother. She was widow, not the bringer of death, but the guardian of life. And she was ready, finally, to fly both roles without compromise. The stars were calling again. This time, she was bringing her daughter along for the journey. Not in the cockpit, not yet, but in spirit, in legacy, in the promise that some dreams survived trauma and emerged stronger. Time to fly. Time to lead. Time to show the world what widow really meant.